Ten of Swords. Stab, stab, stabby, stabby, stab, stab. Welcome to Daily Divinity, where we, among other things, go through tarot cards and readings, etc. In this video, we'll be going through the Ten of Swords, which is a very pleasant, happy-go-lucky card. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. Um, Thank you for watching. I will go through the agenda really briefly before we actually get into things. If you like this content, then like this content, click the button. If you want to share a part of how you interpret this card, I would love to hear it in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. That lets me know to keep doing these things. And I enjoy doing these things, and so it lets me keep knowing how, in what direction to go in. Okay, so the agenda for this video is to go through three words that signify the Ten of Swords in a very big, overall, general way. Then we look at the card, like literally look at the card, and we just describe the visual, what we see, the different symbols and imagery in the card. Then I'll go through the meaning of the symbols and the imagery. I also show the different interpretations of the Ten of Swords. You see the Ten of Winter, the Ten of Bats. These are variations from the Fairy Tarot deck and the Halloween Tarot deck, respectively. And then last, I ask some questions, some guiding questions that might help you to extrapolate the meaning from the Ten of Swords to get at the root of what it's trying to tell you, right? Because tarot cards, after all, they are trying to tell you something. They are the idea of this divination game is to help you to reflect and help you to be aware either of yourself or of others or both, the dynamic between you and others, between you and nature, between you and spirit or source or God, however you describe that higher power. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, three words to describe the Ten of Swords. Well, I definitely would not say happy-go-lucky. I was being sarcastic, very, very sarcastic when I said that. As you can probably tell from the visuals of this card, happy-go-lucky is not the word. What are the three words? Defeat. Defeat is number one. This card is in a place of defeat. This archetype, this stage of the sword's life is in a place of defeat. It had its ideas, it tried, it did not work out. Betrayal isn't, betrayal is more of a Three of Swords word. Endings is a good one. So I wouldn't even say completion. I would just say I would just say endings. And although those words are synonymous, one of them has a better association for the Ten of Swords, and that word is endings. Because when something is complete, it's like, oh, I finished this job or I finished this part of my life. I've graduated, right? It's like a positive implication there. But endings, when something ends, it's like, oh, like, oh, she left me. It's like, oh, that ended. You know what I mean? There's like a certain harshness to that word, which is included in the Ten of Swords. So, all right, so let's review. Number one, defeat. Number two, endings. And number three, I would say perhaps like a state of crisis. Is that? No, yeah, I think that's accurate. Crisis, right? Because whether this person laying on the ground is dead or not, I mean, it's very likely. Very when you've got 10 swords in your back, you're probably dead. Um, but I think because the word I was thinking of was like, is it death? But then I thought, no, because number one, endings takes care of that. And number two, Crisis points to a different aspect of this card that I've not mentioned yet. Maybe it's encapsulated inside the word defeat, arguably not. When you're in a place of defeat, you're not necessarily handling it poorly. Very often, life gives us lemons and we make lemonade. Very often, life gives us crises, problems, troubles, suffering. And yeah, we struggle, but maybe we don't suffer. Maybe we're not miserable. This card, however, is pretty miserable. Okay, so number one, defeat. Number two, it's ended. Number three, crisis. Okay, so now that we've gone through the three words, let's go through the visual. What does this card look like? Um, Hell on earth. Maybe? Hmm, what does this card look like? Okay, fine. Let's be serious. What does it look like? Let's start from the foreground and work our way into the background. The Ten of Swords, um, there is a figure, a person sprawled out on the ground. The ground is sandy, light brown, kind of beige, and the person has a kind of red brown cloth that's on top of them, and there are also 10 swords stabbing the figure's back. And they're not like they did stab, like this is past tense. They're stabbing actively, embedded, kind of like going down the spine of the figure who is laying fairly flat down um, in this sand. So like face down, flat down in the sand. Now keep in mind that I'm talking about Rider-Waite here, the visual for the Rider-Waite tarot deck, which you can see on the right side. Boom, right side. The Halloween deck, I think it's pretty obvious which one is the Halloween deck. It's the one that looks like Halloween with the bats. The Halloween deck represents the figure facing up. So she maybe is facing up. She is the red in the Halloween deck is contained to her hair, the figure's hair. And her body is kind of this purplish, bluish color. She's wearing a dress of some kind. But let's get back to the Rider-Waite because I'm not going into the interpretations of other cards right now. The swords, it should be noted, are very in length and also kind of placement. So they're not they do go down the spine, but it's not a perfect line, and they're not all stabbing her to the same depth. Um, they are all metallic, kind of bluish, silverish color against the background, which is darker with some gray and blue elements representing the clouds and the sky, respectively. The figure's limbs. Okay, we're going to get a little graphic here. So trigger warning if you want to skip this graphic part, which probably already got graphic. I'm sorry, I should have included this trigger before. Uh, but on the other hand, I guess if you're here, you're looking to know what it means. So, um, anyway, you can skip this if you want to just get right to the meaning and the questions. Feel free to fast forward. The limbs of this figure are, how should we say, I think represented in the red cloak and also in this like one strip of red that is kind of like behind the figure's head. Um, Potentially representing blood. The ground beneath the figure is a bare ground, so like no rocks or anything like that, just like a kind of sandy ground. In the background is either blue mountains. Yeah, I think it's blue mountains, not water. Excuse me, I think I said water earlier. I think those are blue mountains. And above the blue mountains is a light colored horizon with gray clouds on top and black, black, black darkness on top of the gray clouds. Okay, so generally speaking, it's somber, it's very intense, even dramatic, and the the meaning here, let's go to the meaning, is finality. Um, so going back to the endings point, right? But like unpleasant endings. Unpleasant endings. Um, I think if you can read this card positively, God bless you. If you are that kind of person to look at this and say, like, wow, I did such a good job in that defeat, then that says so much about you in a good way, I think, because that says that your response to the crisis is optimistic and useful, both at the same time. Because sometimes optimism can go awry and not be useful. But I think in this case, you can see this in a useful and positive, both light, then congratulations on being mature and beautiful and wonderful. That is awesome. Um, questions that you can ask when this card comes up. What are you finishing now that has been unpleasant? And what has it taught you? I'm going to say it again. What are you finishing now? What is coming to an end that has been unpleasant? And what has it taught you? That's question number one. Number two is maybe think about what was it that brought it to an end? And did you want it to end? Right? So if it, regardless of if it was something that, because a lot of things end, and that's just a part of the lifespan of a thing, right? Or a person or a being, is that if there's a beginning, there's an ending, and that's just like a lot of the time how it goes. So endings are natural, is my point, and inevitable is also my point. And yet, if something is amazing and rocking and so super cool, wicked, dope, like woohoo, you don't want it to go. You don't want it to go. You don't want it to stop. You don't want it to end. So this question is getting you to think about what was it that caused the end of this thing that I didn't want to end, so that you can get to the root of the crisis. Think about what triggered the ending, and here's the important follow-up. What part did you play in that ending? Past tense. And a follow-up to the follow-up is what part can you play in this ending? Sort of future tense. So that question is like a threefold question, which is what was the cause of the ending? What role did you play? And what role can you play going forward in this moment of unpleasant ending? Because life is a treasure hunt of unpleasant endings. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they're pleasant endings and sometimes they're beginnings, and life is a box of chocolates. Thank you, Forrest Gump. Um, okay, so we went through the three words. We went through the visual, we did the meaning, we looked at the different interpretations of the different decks. I wanted to show you the Modern Witch tarot deck, which is pretty popular um, as well. It's very similar to the Rider Waite. It's probably the closer interpretation. The only difference I would say is the swords they have a different positionality, and the figure is holding her phone in her hand because it's a Modern Witch tarot deck, so of course she has her phone in her hand. And I think that adds a certain level to like this card that points out something about expectations from the outer world. And I think that's really important. Like I really appreciate this Modern Witch um interpretation of this Ten of Swords, because happiness And this card is gloomy as, but happiness is so often embedded in expectation. Like if you don't expect anything, you cannot be unhappy because, I mean, maybe not cannot, but it is less likely for you to experience an unpleasantness that is this grave and this dramatic if you never expected anything to begin with. So what I'm pointing out is that the Ten of Swords, like, what were you expecting to happen? That's not a, I'm asking it in like a kind of asshole intonation, but let me try to ask yourself, what was I expecting from this? How did it go awry? How did it skirt and pivot into a direction I did not want? But what was the direction that I did want? What was that? Like think about that, envision that, and try to recreate, try to backward design where it did make that unfortunate turn. And again, ask yourself, right, what role did you play and what role can you play? Um, Great. Okay, so thank you so much for watching and learning and completing this part of your journey. If this was a card that you received recently, then thank you for going through that, like on behalf of the whole world. Thank you for going through that. Um, may you may you keep going through your unpleasant endings. May you keep doing it well and keep doing it better and getting stronger and more beautiful. May you enjoy your day and night and stay divine.